Imagine for a second, just imagine discovering that the deities who run the universe are actually failing at their jobs, like just completely dropping the ball.
Right, which is, I mean, it's not what you expect to hear at all.
Exactly. And not only are they failing, but you, with all your messy, complicated, totally human flaws, you are literally the only one who can step in and save the cosmos from complete collapse.
It completely inverts, what we usually expect from
Yeah.
theology. The standard framework we're also used to is, well, it places perfect, omnipotent beings on one side and flawed, struggling mortals on the other.
Yeah, but today's deep dive is taking us into a profoundly different worldview that just shatters that traditional script. We're exploring the theology of Daesun Jinriho, which is a Korean new religious movement.
It's a fascinating topic.
It really is. And we've got some incredibly dense academic research to unpack today. We're looking at Choi Won-hyok's research on the endogenous modernity of Daesun thought, the yin-yang five elements, and some really comprehensive lecture transcripts and diagrams outlining their core doctrines.
Which, I have to say, are incredibly detailed.
Oh, massively. So our mission today is basically to understand this system where gods and humans are positioned as absolute equal partners, and even more radically, where human emotion isn't some, like, earthly weakness you have to meditate away. It's a literal superpower.
Right, it's the required element to keep reality functioning.
Yeah.
But to really grasp how humanity gets, promoted to saving the universe, we have to look at how the management system broke down in the first place.
Let's get into the breakdown, because it's bad.
It's catastrophic. The overarching premise here is that the universe was historically managed by this vast bureaucracy of heavenly spirits, or gods. But eventually, the mismanagement gets so bad that these divine beings have to gather in the spiritual realm at a place called the Heavenly Revelation Tower to, beg for an intervention.
I want to pause on that gathering for a second because the underlying concept of this tower is just, it's fascinating. I was looking at the linguistic breakdown in the sources, and there's this subtle distinction between a physical model at their headquarters, which translates to something like Blue Rooster Tower.
Right, the physical one.
Yeah, and then this spiritual location where the gods actually meet, the Heavenly Revelation Tower, or Cheongaetap. And that syllable, Cheonjae, means to inquire or seek guidance.
The irony there is just palpable. You have a cosmos entirely run by gods, yet they're the ones forming this desperate committee to ask for answers.
They're essentially calling a massive all-hands meeting.
Exactly. They are appealing to the supreme god, Sangjae, because the universe is on the brink of an absolute apocalypse.
But I'm struggling to understand the gods side of this, though. Like, if they're divine infinite beings, how are they completely incapable of fixing their own system? I mean, how do gods actually fail?
Well, the catch is in how this specific theology defines divinity. We tend to project our own ideas of omnipotence onto them, assuming a god knows, well, everything.
Right, the all-knowing bearded guy in the sky.
Right. But in this framework, gods are highly specialized experts. They possess a quality called mayung, which translates roughly to being profoundly bright or brilliant. But, and this is key, it's only within a very specific, isolated domain.
Okay, so like a god of a specific mountain or something.
Exactly. Think of a mountain god, a rain god, a wind god. They possess absolute, flawless mastery over their individual fields.
So they have extreme tunnel vision, basically. Their brilliance is actually the vulnerability.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
Because they are so hyper-specialized, they are fundamentally incapable of communicating across disciplines. And this creates the first half of the universe's existential crisis, which is a state called bijap.
Bijap.
Yeah. The term literally describes this inability to connect or communicate. The deity in charge of the oceans has absolutely no mechanism to speak with the deity in charge of the forests. They are completely isolated inside their own localized brilliance.
Okay, honestly, this sounds like a disastrous corporate setup. Like, you know when you have an IT department full of absolute geniuses who speak in code?
Oh, completely.
And then an HR department full of policy experts, and they just absolutely refuse to talk to each other. They don't even speak the same language.
That is the perfect analogy.
So the departments get completely siloed, everything grinds to a halt, and the frontline workers who, in this cosmic scenario, are us, human beings, end up taking all the collateral damage.
And that collateral damage falling on humanity is the second half of the crisis, known as Jake.
Right, the crisis of the physical world.
Exactly. Consider the nature of these gods for a second. They lack physical bodies. Consequently, they have zero framework for understanding physical suffering. They administer the natural world, the water, the fire, the wind, according to incredibly rigid, inflexible algorithms.
So they're just running the code.
Pretty much. If the atmospheric rule dictates a monsoon must happen, the monsoon happens. The rain god doesn't possess the capacity to feel empathy for the human beings drowning in the flood below.
Jeez. So humans are just trapped on Earth, suffering through natural disasters, famine, disease, all dictated by a completely blind, unfeeling cosmic bureaucracy.
It's incredibly bleak.
It makes total sense that this would generate a massive wave of anger. I mean, the research mentions grudges and this huge buildup of toxic energy, but how does human anger threaten the actual universe? Because usually, human suffering is just considered a tragic byproduct, not a structural threat to reality itself.
Well, there's this incredible line from an ancient text mentioned in the sources, the Yinfu Jing, that captures the actual physics of this resentment.
Oh yeah, the physics of resentment. I love that phrasing.
The text argues that when heaven emits its killing energy, or salgi, the stars move. When Earth emits that same destructive energy, dragons and snakes rise. But when human beings emit salgi, when our collective resentment reaches a critical mass, heaven and earth literally flip over.
Heaven and earth flip over. That is just such an evocative image. It gives human emotion gravitational weight. Like, the resentment of humanity isn't just a fleeting feeling. It literally has the mass to break the cosmos.
It really does. The physics of it creates a cosmic feedback loop. The sheer density of human resentment rises up and actually blocks the energy of heaven.
Wow, just clogs the whole system.
Exactly. And this blockage exacerbates the gods' communication barrier. The Pijap deepens. So because the gods are now even more disconnected from each other and the whole system, their rigid management of the natural elements becomes even more erratic and disastrous.
Which I'm guessing just creates more suffering.
Exactly. It worsens the physical suffering of humanity, the Jake, which then generates even more resentment.
It's just a completely toxic, closed-loop system spiraling toward bankruptcy, which, really humanizes the divine in a strange way. These gods aren't the omnipotent fixers we usually read about. They're completely trapped.
They're paralyzed by their own expertise and their total lack of empathy.
So the departments won't talk, the frontline workers are furious enough to burn the building down, and the entire cosmic machine is just shutting off. So what happens? How do we fix a bankrupt universe?
Well, the supreme god, Guchi Sanjay, realizes the system cannot repair itself from within. The foundational logic of the universe, something referred to as Sangdo, has completely evaporated.
And I noticed from the sources that Sangdo roughly translates to the natural order, right?
Right. But the most practical way to define Sangdo is simply common sense. The universe has literally lost its common sense.
Wow.
The rational, sustainable order of things has just evolved into absurdity and needless suffering. And to restore that baseline common sense, the supreme god has to take unprecedented executive action. He descends directly into the human world.
Okay, this event is called Insei Daeging. And we're not talking about some vague, ancient, mythological era here. He takes the human form of a man named Kang Jungsan in late 19th century Korea, which, historically speaking, is just a fascinating time for a philosophy about breaking down rigid hierarchies to emerge.
It really is. Late 19th century Korea was a period of immense social upheaval. Traditional class structures were fracturing everywhere. The timing mirrors the theological message perfectly.
It's like the perfect stage for it.
Exactly. And Sangjay arrives with a specific mission called Shionji Gongsa, which translates to the heaven and earth works.
Now, I have to admit, when I first read Heaven and Earth Works in the outline, I pictured some sort of divine construction project, like mountains being moved, oceans being parted, that sort of epic mythology thing. But it's much more bureaucratic than that, isn't it?
It is, yeah. The term gongsa points to administrative or executive public duties, kind of like a magistrate restructuring a government.
Okay, that makes sense.
Sangjay isn't physically terraforming the planet. He is rewriting the underlying cosmic program. He is forcibly reorganizing the laws of the universe to fix this completely broken management structure.
And the most radical piece of this restructuring, from what I read, is the initiation of the Injan Sade, the era of human nobility. By choosing to take a human form and adopting a human surname, Kangsang Sangjay, he completely upends the cosmic org chart.
Completely. Throughout almost all recorded human history and theology, heaven is inherently revered over earth, right? And gods are placed definitively above humans.
Always. That's just the default assumption.
But Sangjay's intervention establishes a principle of yin-yang haptiok, which is the combining and equalizing of yin and yang virtues. He mandates an absolute leveling of the playing field. Heaven and earth, gods and mortals, they are now completely equal in status.
But I mean, why? Why did the supreme god have to physically become human to execute this? If he is the ultimate CEO of the universe, why couldn't he just mandate this restructuring from his corner office in heaven? It seems like a pretty extreme measure to subject himself to human frailty just to, like, send a memo.
Well, think about the psychological profile of the gods we discussed earlier.
But hyper-specialized IT guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These deities are incredibly stubborn, fiercely prideful, and totally obsessed with their own isolated brilliance. They viewed humans as inferior, messy, physical creatures. If the supreme gods simply shouted down from the clouds that humans were now their equals, the specialized gods would never have accepted it.
They literally wouldn't have taken the meeting.
They would have actively resisted.
Yeah.
So the ultimate leadership maneuver was for the highest divinity to willingly adopt a human form. By doing so, he forced the rest of the pantheon into a corner.
Oh, that's brilliant.
They have absolutely no choice but to respect humanity because their ultimate superior chose to become one. Sanjay essentially forced the stubborn gods to the table to collaborate with the very beings they previously ignored.
A completely brilliant strategic checkmate. Okay, so the playing field is leveled, the gods are forced to respect human beings, and the structural framework is in place.
Yeah.
But how does the actual maintenance of the universe happen on, like, a random Tuesday? What is the daily mechanism of fixing reality?
The core mechanism, really, the absolute engine of this entire philosophy, is a concept called sin in Vido. The translation alone gives us the blueprint.
Break that down for us.
Sure, signed in refers to God and human. Ui means relying on or leaning upon. And do means leading or guiding.
God and human mutually relying on and leading each other, that is a massive departure from standard religious practice. I mean, in most traditions, humans are entirely passive. We just rely on them, and the divine leads.
The philosophical shift here is profound. If you look at traditional practices, like chanting in Buddhism to seek refuge, the core tenet is entirely reliant upon the divine for salvation or enlightenment.
Right. Humans are always seeking an escape from the physical world by leaning on higher powers.
Exactly. But Sin and Vido dictates that the era of passive reliance is over. Gods and humans are now required to co-lead and mutually rely on each other to actively manage this world. Neither side can keep the universe running alone.
Okay, here's where my mind was completely blown by the research. I get why we need the gods. You know, they have the technical knowledge to keep the tectonic plates from cracking in half. But what on earth do humans bring to the table that omnipotent deities need so desperately? Like, what is our cosmic utility?
The answer lies in the contrast between two distinct qualities, Mayong and Jong.
Mayong. Okay.
We establish that the gods possess Mayong. They have that bright, cold, hyper-specialized technical knowledge of mechanics.
Right.
But they completely lack Jong.
And Zhong is such a vital concept to unpack here. It doesn't really have a perfect English equivalent, does it? It's often translated as affection or empathy, but it carries so much more weight than that. It's about this deep, warm, sticky, emotional connection between people.
That's a great way to put it. Gods have zero Jong. They are brilliant,
Right.
but they are cold, calculating specialists.
There are algorithms.
Exactly. Human beings, conversely, might not possess the divine technical know-how to make a seed germinate, but we possess an overwhelming abundance of in-Jong human empathy. We have this profoundly messy, deeply emotional capacity to connect with one another, to feel the pain of a stranger, and to unify disparate groups.
This is just the ultimate plot twist to me, because in so many philosophical frameworks, we are taught to view our human emotions, like our messy attachments, our grief, our overwhelming feelings, as flaws, right?
Always. Something to be overcome.
Yeah, we're instructed to transcend them, to quiet our minds so we can reach some higher state of detached enlightenment. But in Decent Thought, this messy human empathy is the exact cosmic glue required to save the universe. Our emotional intelligence is literally the missing technology.
It really is. Human empathy is the sole force capable of curing the gods' communication breakdown, their bijap.
How does that actually work, though?
Well, when human beings utilize their Zhang, when they actively engage in empathy and emotional connection, it somehow bridges the gap between the isolated, stubborn deities in the spiritual realm. Our capacity for connection basically facilitates their ability to communicate.
Oh, wow. So we act as, like, the network cable connecting their isolated servers.
That's exactly it. The symbiosis is so elegant. When human empathy finally allows the gods to communicate and work together across their disciplines, they can properly apply their divine wisdom, their mayang, to manage the physical world smoothly.
Which stops the disasters.
Precisely. This, in turn, saves humanity from the chaotic physical disasters, the Jake.
We lean on them for the technical administration of nature, and they literally require us for emotional intelligence and cohesion. I love that. It elevates the human experience so far beyond just sort of enduring life and waiting around for an afterlife.
Absolutely. The ultimate goal of this joint venture is to achieve a state called Dowanagwan.
Dowanagwan, what does that look like?
It's vital to clarify what this actually means because it is so easily misunderstood. When people hear phrases like that, they often picture a mythical paradise, something akin to the peach blossom spring from ancient folklore.
Right, like an escapist fairy tale, a
Mhm.
magical realm you get whisked away to if you've been a good person.
Exactly. But the linguistic root of Dowanagwan points to something much more grounded. The Do refers to the Do, or the way, and Wa means to transform or reach completion. It isn't the different dimension at all.
It's here.
Yes, it is this exact physical world, fundamentally transformed and completed by the Tao through the arduous daily work of divine human cooperation.
So it's a reality built on actively resolving conflict, rather than just ignoring it or running away from it.
The cornerstone of that transformed world is Heiwan Sangsang, which is the active resolution of all grievances and resentment.
Getting rid of that toxic salgy.
Exactly. It's a state of mutual life-giving existence where all that toxic, cosmos-breaking salgy energy has been systematically unraveled through empathy.
Which I think just completely reframes the purpose of your life. You are not a passive observer hoping the universe treats you kindly. Your capacity to feel, to unify, to try and understand someone else, it's an active structural necessity. You are literally essential personnel in cosmic maintenance.
It assigns immense gravity to ordinary interactions. The simple daily act of resolving a dispute with a neighbor or, showing unprompted compassion to someone who is suffering isn't merely a polite moral behavior. In this worldview, that act of connection is literal structural engineering for reality.
I think that brings this entire deep dive directly into the lap of anyone listening to this right now. We all experience those days where the sheer scale of the world is paralyzing,
Right.
You look at the news, you look at the systems breaking down around us, and it is incredibly easy to feel like a tiny, powerless gear in a massive machine that is just spinning totally out of control.
The lens of this theology offers a radically empowering counter-narrative to that feeling. It proposes that your human empathy is the most advanced technology that exists. It is the one vital, unifying element that even the most brilliant, specialized entities in the cosmos are entirely missing.
We started out today by posing a wild hypothetical. What if you found out the gods were failing and you had to save the universe? Well, in this framework, you don't save the cosmos by discovering a latent superpower or inventing a new machine. You save it by being profoundly, stubbornly, connectedly human.
It leaves a really fascinating question hanging in the air.
Oh, definitely. What do you think?
Well, if human empathy, or zhong, is the literal mechanism required for the survival of the universe, how might treating your everyday emotional connections as universe-saving work alter the way you navigate the world tomorrow?
Wow.
What if the simple, exhausting act of trying to understand a stubborn stranger isn't just good manners, but the exact cosmic force keeping the stars in the sky?
That is something to seriously mull over the next time you're stuck in infuriating traffic and you feel that toxic resentment starting to build up. Keep that empathy flowing. The universe might literally depend on it.